Hello, this is the Beyond Distribution with GTDC podcast, in which we delve into conversations with the leading tech executives in the channel. Today's guest is Dangvy Keller, who's the Vice President of Distribution Sales at Veeam Software. She was named to CRN's Women of the Channel Power 100 list in 2022, and it is a very active member in supporting and driving more women into tech. In this episode, Dangvy talks to Frank about her professional journey, the importance of diversity in the industry, and Veeam's go-to-market strategy. We'd like to take a moment to thank all of our listeners for your continued support as we celebrate our 1-year podcast anniversary. Don't forget to like and rate.
Welcome, everybody. This is Frank Vitagliano, and we're doing the next edition of Beyond Distribution podcast. And I am thrilled today to have Dangvy Keller, Vice President of Alliances and Distribution Sales for the Americas, with us. So Dangvy, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me, Frank. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. We were at the GTDC event not too long ago, and it was a good opportunity to kind of talk to you a little bit and to hear what's going on. I've known you for a long time. You've been in the industry, but for folks that don't know you, you've worked your way through a variety of different roles, and kind of unusual. You're on the disty side, and then you moved on to the vendor community, and there aren't a lot of folks that have done that. Mm-hmm. But talk a little bit about your experiences, what led you to a career in IT, et cetera, so people get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. So I would tell you I'm a huge fan of technology. I've always been fascinated by technology, and as a kid, I'm just naturally a curious person. And as a kid, I was always asking my parents, like, how does the voice come out of the radio? Or, why can't I see the person, on the other side of the phone? So I think that's really sparked, my interest in IT in general. But I also graduated college right after 9/11. So I know you can guess my age, but no companies weren't hiring. And it was through the college career fair that I stumbled on an opportunity with IT distribution, a local distributor in the area. And it was one of the best decisions I made, because 20 plus years later, I'm still in the industry. And I feel like starting off in distribution really grounded me and really taught me all the aspects of the industry. And so I built strong relationships and eventually, migrated out of distribution and onto the supplier side, working at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and then now currently at Veeam. But it's been an amazing ride. And, I think I'll be here until I graduate or until I retire.
Yeah. Well, by the way, if you graduated around 9/11, that's not too bad. If I told you when I graduated, that would be the problem. That would be a problem. So I'm not going to do that. But, it's kind of interesting, because starting in disty, it does ground you. It does provide a really good foundation, because you're able to get, sort of the viewpoint of the vendor community, right? And upstream, and then the downstream piece on the solution provider side. And so I think it gives you a really good perspective. And honestly, there have not been a lot of folks that have kind of done it that way. Yeah. Started with, disty and moved over to vendor. So that's an interesting transition. And I'm sure, has been helpful to you.
Yeah. Extremely. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So, obviously, certainly back then and even today to some degree, although it's getting better, kind of been a male-dominated, industry. So, early in your career, talk about that. How did you feel about that? Were there obstacles? What was your, how did you kind of approach that?
For sure. So I would tell you it was very challenging and frustrating to not have a seat at the table. And, again, I was early in my career. I didn't have the network that I have today. I didn't have people, guiding me or mentoring me at that time. I didn't have people advocating for me when I'm not in the room, or identifying opportunities for me. And so it was very frustrating to see, and to not be able to, have a voice and provide my input as it relates to a decision or the overall business. But I think that that has changed. And, obviously I've grown in my career. I've built my network, and I've have a lot more experience. But I do think that there's still a big gap, and there's still so much more that needs to be done across the industry to ensure that there's more women and females and more diversity in general at the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of funny. I've never really thought about it, that way, or hadn't thought about it that way early on, because, I was with IBM for years, and IBM was really a pretty good company as it relates to respect for the individual, right? And so, while we didn't have, specific programs designed toward, diversity or inclusion or things like that, the policies kind of drove it. And for example, I remember somebody asking me one time whether we had different pay scales for men and women. I was like, no, no, we don't. Are you kidding me? And it was such a, strange thought.
Yeah.
So I never thought about it. But then when, for example, when CRN started doing Women of the Channel,
Yep.
I started thinking about it more. And I guess what you realize is, even though you don't think that, you think everybody's got the same opportunity. The reality is we weren't, as an industry, doing things to help with inclusion and help with that, because to your point, when you were at the table, there really weren't a lot of other women at the table with you, and it's hard. Right.
Yeah. And there's that, that unconscious bias that still, that it was very dominant back then. I think it's still, there today, but we are making progress. And I think a lot of the companies in our industry recognize that, when you have a more diverse leadership team or a more diverse workforce, you see more creativity, you see, higher productivity and more revenue and profitability. Right. So, and I think that is eye-opening for a lot of companies. And so DE&I has become a huge priority and initiative, I know, for Veeam, as well as other companies and partners that I've worked with, which is great. And I do, one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and I wish I had more time to do, is I do think as an industry, we need to start earlier in the process. So working with schools and young females at the grade school level to encourage more females to participate in STEM, right? Working with, colleges, freshman year and beyond to ensure that there's more activity around STEM so that we can build that pipeline of more females and diversity coming into our industry. So, I mean, those are some of the things that I'm, working on, inside of Veeam. And across the industry, I know some of my peers are also leading those charge inside their companies.
Yeah, I think, I was on the board of CompTIA for a while, and they have a really good focus on careers and in fact, women in technology and STEM, and they spend a lot of time on it. And one of the things that they were able to highlight is that there's more opportunity than people realize across the board in IT. So in other words, most people, when you think about IT, you think about, well, I've got to get a computer science degree,
exactly.
Right? Somebody's engineering, I gotta, and that's not the case at all. I mean, there's a ton of opportunity. I mean, think about what we do,
exactly.
And the roles that I've had as a channel chief, and now what you have, totally different. And there's, sales, there's marketing, there's, operations, there's just tons of different opportunities. And I think that's one of the things people have to understand, because you tend to think about, oh, if I'm going to go work for Google, or I'm going to work for Veeam, or I'm going to go work for Apple, I've got to have an engineering degree. That's not really the case.
Correct. Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, and that was something that, we kind of realized when we were doing the work with CompTIA.
Yeah.
So I mentioned CRN, and they have the Woman of the Channel Power 100 list, which I guess are some of the most powerful, women in the channel, and you're obviously justifiably included in that community.
Yep.
And so that's pretty good honor. And I know you participate, with them in their events, but I would assume that means a lot to you.
Absolutely. I mean, truly an honor, and to be a part of that group and to be a part of such an elite, powerful, strong group of women. And I know a lot of my colleagues on that list, I mean, they're just as passionate about paving, paying it forward and paving the way for those behind us. And, to be on a list with some of my mentors, people who have guided me in my career, it's just amazing that I've even listed, next to them. And so it's a great, I think it's a way to recognize some of our top leaders, female leaders in the industry. I want to see that list expand to even further, and more recognition for women who are doing not just their daily job and doing it well, but also advocating for change and doing so much more across the industry.
Yeah, and the mentoring piece is really important. I mean, when we were at GTDC, we were kidding around about mentoring people and have whose branch of the
Yes.
tree, and all of that.
Yes.
But it is really important.
Mhm.
I think back at people that mentored me, and I kind of do it now, partly because I like to do it, but also
Mhm.
because I feel like you have to give back. It's the right thing to do. And you
Exactly.
get to the point where there's some point in your career where all of a sudden it's like you've gone from a mentee to a mentor, and it's kind of, when did that happen?
Yeah,
And I'm sure that's kind
definitely.
of where you're starting to get to now, right?
Absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
great. I mean, most of my mentors have said to me, and I know you're a fan of this, is someday I'm going to work for you. And I say the same thing to my mentees. Someday I'm going to work for you. And that's my goal, is to really help advance others in their careers, especially females within our industry.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's important, and it's amazing how people really appreciate it, and they don't say it enough, but
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
So let's shift over now to some of the technology business stuff and some of
Sure.
the stuff that you've done. And you and I talked about this a couple of years ago when I took the GTDC job.
Hmm.
Right from the beginning, when you helped build the go-to-market strategy
Hmm.
for Veeam, distribution was a major part of it, right? I
Yes.
mean, distribution was embedded. And in fact, I remember at one point we talked about Ratmir perhaps
Hmm.
even doing a keynote,
Yep.
and I think this was 2019, and of course, pandemic hit after that, and we
Yep.
we never really did it. But talk to me a little bit about the how the development of the go-to-market strategy, and why everybody, you all thought the distribution piece was so important, and then as importantly, how's that worked out for you since then?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, Frank. I mean, Veeam has always had the channel and distribution at the heart of their go to market. Veeam grew to $1 billion company within 10 years, putting themselves in a very elite, small group of companies that have been able to do that in our industry. And to be honest with you, we could not have done it without our partner, and specifically our distributors. I mean, they continue to play a critical role in our go to market. Majority of our business today goes through two-tier distribution. So we cannot place an order without the help of our distributors. I mean, they're processing all of that, from the front end to the back end, whether it's pricing, to, just getting the order booked. But that, it doesn't stop. Their value-added services does not stop there. Our distributors have helped position us in the market. They've created opportunities on our behalf, across all segments. Veeam's really started down in SMB, and we've grown up in commercial and enterprise. And we couldn't have done that without our distributors. They have an engine that has helped us scale our business. And as the industry continues to change, and we see, a shift to the shift in business to everything as a service, or cloud consumption and subscription, they are making investments, or have made investments, to really stay ahead of those trends, so that they can work with vendors like Veeam to enable partners to make that pivot to everything as a service or subscription, right? And so there's a lot of resources and tools, and value added services outside of the normal, I'm going to say, pick, pack, and ship, that
Right.
they do on our behalf. I mean, I think one of the conversations you and I had early on when you took the GTDC role was, hey, you're a software vendor, yet, you've basically put your entire go-to-market around the channel and around distribution. And the answer is yes. And it's worked out for us. We've grown over $1 billion in revenue in less than 10 years. And, kudos to Ratmir and Andre for really, setting that foundation for Veeam. And I'm not sure if you follow Ratmir, but he's founded another company, and I think he's going to use the same strategy. So it does work, and there is value there and opportunity to scale the business leveraging distribution.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, you talk to a lot of people who think about distribution, as you said, pick, pack, and ship, or I used to say, a bank and a warehouse, right? But the reality is, if you talk to solution providers today, and I do a lot, and I say, even with the advent of, marketplaces and platforms and hyperscalers and all the other stuff that's going on, how come you're still using distribution as much as you are? And the answer becomes very simple: is there's still a ton of work that needs to be done, whether it's a subscription model, a consumption model, or, sales through a marketplace. There's still a lot of work that needs to get done. And the typical solution provider doesn't want to do it. It's not their business, and they don't want to hire people and raise their SG&A costs. So I think it's significant. I also would tell you, though, we have to kind of look at this from the standpoint of, and I talk about it all the time, Disty's continually evolving, but they do need to continue to evolve, right? In other words, and so what are some of the things, because, you're part of, and I didn't mention this on the beginning, I probably should have, you're part of our advisory council for GTDC, and we rely on you as one of the leaders in the vendor community to tell us, hey, here's what we're thinking about. And obviously you have discussions with the distributors, but we also convey a lot of what you guys talk about. What, as you look at this evolving over the next, 4 or 5 years, what do you need distribution to either continue to do well or begin to initiate things that maybe they're not doing, as well?
So I think, what they can continue to do for us is really help us scale and leverage, places in the market that we can't reach. That's a huge value add from a Veeam perspective, because again, we don't have, hundreds of thousands of employees. We cannot cover the thousands of partners that are out there. So we rely on distribution for, their help and their scale, their ability to scale and to cover the market for us. I think, as the business moves more towards everything as a service and cloud and consumption, I think, the distributors have invested heavily on their cloud marketplaces. And I think we need to continue to figure out more synergies with that. As a cloud vendor, we do leverage all of the marketplaces with our distributors. And I see tremendous value because they have the ability to access and work with thousands of service providers that we're not touching today either, right? And there's something to say when the AWS, the Googles, and the Azures are also leveraging distribution for their scale and reach in this space. And so I think that those are things that they just need to continue to drive. And then as for areas that they can work on, I definitely think there's opportunity in being more agile and helping vendors be more agile and efficient, right? And I think that comes up in the conversations that I have internally all the time. How do we, improve the customer experience, and how do we drive more efficiency in our business? And I think that distributors will always play a critical role in that discussion. So they will need to continue to invest. And, I think about Ingram Micro's Xvantage platform that they're rolling out, right? Those are the things that we want to make sure they're continuing to stay ahead of, because that's a huge value add that we leverage with our distributor, is the ability to scale and to drive efficiency so that we can essentially offer and improve our customer experience.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense, because when you think about it, it goes back to what they basically provide, which is operational excellence at scale. And in this particular case, it really becomes operational excellence in your space versus, what I was focused on, 20, 25, 30 years ago was I was worrying about getting PCs to market, and, they were able to do that.
Yeah.
But it's totally different now based on what you're doing. And so they have to build sort of different muscles. And there are major investments in that area. I mean, and they continue. The other thing that's interesting about this, and you mentioned a really interesting point, and I've had this discussion with people, because people view, the hyperscaler scenario and the go-to-market piece as completely competitive. And it's kind of like, oh, wait a minute, step back for a minute. They're a vendor. Every vendor in the marketplace has a hybrid route to market. Includes direct, includes single tier to solution providers, and it includes two-tier. And oh, by the way, all the hyperscalers, and two of them are represented on our advisory council with Eric Buck with GCS and JJ at HP, who you probably worked with at HP, right? Yeah. And they'd be the first to tell you, we need distribution for the same reasons every other vendor needs distribution. We need reach into the marketplace. We need access to a whole group of smaller players that we would never get to. And we need help with, just getting activities done at scale.
Correct.
And I think that's a misnomer, and people kind of forget that. A lot. And so I have that conversation all the time with folks about it,
Well, I think when we first started, together from a GTDC perspective, the perception, to your point, was, oh, the hyperscalers don't need distribution. And, we were really pushing the distributors like, no, there is going to be a need for you at some point. And I think it's great that they recognize we do need the channel, we do need distribution, because I think of, I'm a salesperson, and I'm all about, being smart with my time and the resources that I have to scale my business. And I think that that's what distribution provides, regardless of what business you're in, whether it's hardware, software, services. I mean, they will help you scale the business. Why? I mean, there's, you kind of have to balance and figure out the opportunity costs. But in reality, I mean, I just think it's more cost-effective model, and it's much more efficient. And why not offload that to someone else to help you while you can focus on other areas of the business?
Yeah, it's interesting, and we talk about it all the time, but the channel chiefs are continually internally having to defend the channel, first of all, and then secondly, in a lot of cases, distribution, right? Because people come in who are really smart people, but don't necessarily understand the technology go-to-market, process well. And they immediately look at, how can I cut costs? How can I be more efficient? And I think the big issue, and we recently released a report that was done by Channelnomics, Larry Walsh's organization, in February, that what we talked about was nobody will ever debate that there's cost associated with distribution. There's no debate. There has to be cost associated with it. If they're going to invest $1 billion in a marketplace, they got to make it somewhere, right?
Yes.
But what you have to be able to step back and think about, and this is where I think your executive team was brilliant in the beginning, was, can I do that more efficiently, or can I do that less costly? And the answer is no. And the conversation needs to turn from how much does it cost to what would it cost me to replace it? And then people start to realize I can't replace it, right? And at least not easily. And I was part of, back in the day, at one point, IBM, when we were being pressured by Dell, when Dell first came into play, we decided we were going to do some stuff, direct. And that didn't last very long. It was, and then you start doing exactly what you said. You start looking at the economics of it, and you realize the model doesn't work. It can't work.
Well, that study that just recently got published is phenomenal. So I encourage any of you watching who haven't looked at the study to go out there and take a look at it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, in fact, we just had a European VAC call just an hour ago, and Larry came on and presented it to all of the European VAC members, and they were kind of blown away because, my take on it is, having been in the seat, my take on it is, there's something in there that you can use. It may not be the whole, 12 pages or whatever, but there's something in there that you can use with your discussion. So
Absolutely.
yeah, well, good. So kind of winding down, let's talk a little bit about, cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's top of mind for every organization. I mean, everywhere I go, every event I attend, if I meet 10 vendors, 7 of them are in the cybersecurity space, right? And I hate to say it, but I can't remember, I just can't keep track of all of them. But, you guys have been involved in that space since, day one.
Yep.
And, so what do you see as, some of the threats, that are out there? What do you see as some of the trends that are happening? And what are you guys doing to, help the channel partners in this space?
Absolutely. So you are absolutely right. Cybersecurity is the top area of concern for IT leaders. And according to IDC, it's the one area of the budget that's not being compromised right now, right? And so we just released our data protection trend, and it was really eye-opening to see the results or the impact of ransomware on our partners and customers. So 85% of companies have experienced a ransomware attack in the last year.
Wow.
And which is huge, right? And I would tell you, to make matters worse, a third of those victims who actually paid the ransom still didn't get their data back. And the average downtime for those companies is about 1 to 2 weeks. And so imagine that, being down for 1 to 2 weeks and not having access to your data. I mean, unreal, right?
Yeah.
So luckily with Veeam, we offer our customer a single solution to combat that cyber threat, because we are the last line of defense. And with our recent release of V12, we actually have introduced direct to object storage backup, which gives our customers, the full availability of trusted immutability, as well as the cost-effective scalability of that comes with object storage. And that's where I would tell you, go research Ratmir. I think his next the company that he's just launched is an object storage company as well. So definitely a play there and a plug there as well. But Veeam has, we recognize that this is a huge challenge, right? And so we've worked with our partners on a lot of tools and programs that they can leverage with their customers to ensure that they are, that the customers have the best practice in play. We also introduced our ransomware warranty, which is a multi-layer approach to ransomware that gives our partners and customers confidence that they are prepared, in the worst case scenario. And so you can find all that information on our website, but we will continue to provide resources and tools for partners so that they can assess the environment that the customers are in to ensure that they have, a plan in case something does happen. And that plan includes, having Veeam as their protection and their last line of defense. And so, it's a huge endeavor. It's happening. It's real. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So, we want to work with our entire community and our partners to ensure that their customers are not, going through this horrible situation.
Yeah, well, those numbers are unbelievable. 85% is incredible. I no idea that it was that big. That's shocking to me. In 1 to 2 weeks, I mean, I can't go without email for a day.
Right? An hour. So I'm like, what is wrong with my phone?
Yeah.
Why can't I access?
Exactly. So, I mean, that would drive me bananas. I mean, well, that's good. Well, you guys are doing a great job, and you need to continue it. And that's and I'm confident you will. And I really appreciate you getting on and spending some time with us, because it's very valuable. People kind of get to know you a little better, certainly know Veeam a little bit better, and kind of know what a lot of us in the industry know, which is you're a rock star, and we appreciate you kind of hanging out with us for a little while. So
absolutely,
yeah, thanks for your time. I'm going to continue to rely on you to be, part of our advisory council, and, continue to work with you. But this was great. Any final thoughts? Any final comments?
Just that, I've spent my entire career in the channel and, specifically in distribution, and there is tremendous value. So, if anybody out there wants more details on my experience and, what I've done with distribution, I'm happy to, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to walk you through it. And lastly, if I would be remiss if I didn't thank our distributors globally for their ongoing support and partnership. It's been a great journey with Veeam, and I'm looking forward to continuing growing our business together with them. So truly appreciate the opportunity, Frank. I know I'll see you hopefully soon
Yeah.
at another event, but appreciate all that you do for the community as well.
Yeah, well, thanks, and good talking to you.
All right, thanks, Frank. Take care.
Okay, thank you.